Welcome to the Rich Equation, everybody. I am super excited to do this face-to-face with Erik today.
We did our first one face-to-face, like kind of mid.
I know. How can we go backwards
I know.
to do Zoom? November 5th of 2011 was the first time Erik and I met. I found Erik on Instagram doing some fun things, and he was inspiring me and talking about some really great ideas, and so I invited him, and we've become very close friends since it. We've traveled together, we've spent time together, and his business is thriving and growing, and he's growing and thriving, and so how can we not do another one?
I know.
And go deeper?
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, almost a year and a half.
Yes.
It's been an amazing journey. So
We've been to Mexico together, been to Costa Rica together.
yeah, we're gonna get all into it today. So just tell me, how are you, man? How's it going?
Things are going well. Things are going well. You know, sun's finally shining, so I think all of our spirits are up for. It's gonna start raining next couple of days. I'm a big baseball fan. I don't know if we really talk about that, but opening day this week, you know, the season starts. So the Dodgers, yep. So I'll go to opening day on Thursday. I'm gonna be in Pasadena for a conference, and so I'm already there. So I gotta go to the game.
Yeah,
so
there you go. You're a big baseball guy.
Yeah, I love the energy in that stadium. It's awesome. Nothing like it.
Did you play baseball when you were a kid?
I did, yeah. I still play a little bit. So my 10-year-old, he just turned 10 over the weekend. He plays travel ball, so it's fun to be out there playing and helping out a little bit and watching him just develop. And, you know, just I think in life or in business, people want shortcuts, right? But when you see little kids playing sports, and I saw some friends over the weekend, their kids are in T-ball, right? The kids hit it and they don't know where to run, and all the kids run towards the ball. And just to see like where my son is at 10, you know, I'd say they're decent, but then you see high school kids play, they're 14, 15 years old. So it's just like it's always a process. The maturation process is long. There's no shortcuts to success. So.
Well, I'm really excited to do this. You know, I've started this intention to start doing 2 episodes, or the second episode, with people that I'm really interested in going deeper with. And you know, I'm gonna encourage the audience to go back to Erik's first episode and kind of get a background of who Erik is and what he talks about, and all the things that he's doing, because I think I really do want to go deeper today. And I may use the Rich Equation 5 pillars as a framework.
Love that.
Kind of what we're doing. But when I first, and let me just tell you kind of what kind of guy Erik is. So one of the first times I met Erik, I told him, let's go travel together on a trip. And by the way, you don't know where we're going, just say yes. And he said yes. And we went on this incredible journey in Mexico, in San Carlos in Mexico. Yeah. And we traveled together with 9 other dudes, and we went deep, and we learned so much about each other. And so that's just the kind of guy Erik is, like all in, brotherhood, part of the tribe. And so it's been a really fun journey to get to know you and watch you on your journey. So that's what we're here today, is to really share, where have you been, what have you learned, what's going on.
Yeah.
So
first of all, I'll say, since this is the Rich Equation podcast, there's another part of that equation, which is you, and you're so humble. But what's so funny when you say that, and it always pops into my head, when we got to the airport, you know, guys are like, hey, are you on this trip, this Ashish thing? And everybody's like, yes. We're just sitting around, and they're all chatting. Some of the guys know each other, and then eventually conversation dies, and they all look around, they're like, do any of you know where we're going? And I'm like, I don't even know where in Mexico this place is. And so like, I'm like, I pulled it up. I know where it is, like on the map, but I've never heard of it. And so you had not only me that trusted, but to speaks to the individual you are, there's all these other guys that's just like, we're getting on this flight to go someplace we don't know, to take boxes we don't know what's in it, right? To a foreign country. So we would get there to customs, because I've been to Mexico a few times, and I like saw the words out of their mouth, because the customs had to bring the customs agents into this remote tarmac, right? And they're like, what's in the boxes? And one of the guys, before I could stop him, was like, I don't know. And I'm like, don't say that in Mexico. So, yeah. But no, that was just kind of the beginning of that journey. It was really awesome. Awesome.
So let's talk about wealth. Wealth is the first pillar. You're in the wealth management business. Yep. Mm-hmm. We're sitting here in March.
I'm in the outcomes, managing expectations business.
That's right.
But no.
We're sitting in a really interesting time in the world. The financial markets are crazy. Mm-hmm. Interest rates are going up. I won't say they're high. They're just going up.
Yep.
Banks are going out of business left, right, and center. Mm-hmm. People are scared. Yep. There's high inflation. What's going on in the world of finance, and what do we do about it?
Yeah, so I mean, to the joke, I just said, because I think when anybody says, "Oh, this person's a financial advisor," or wealth manager, whatever, moniker, it's just like, oh, I don't want. I've already heard it, or I have it taken care of, and I think that's what's unique about us, is that we try to give it a different spin, that we rarely talk about markets or rates of return. We are talking about outcomes and goals and what we're trying to get to, because all the other stuff are tools. But the reason I mention that is it is an interesting time. But you have to understand that these tools, these institutions, these systems have been around for a really long time, even before, here in the U.S., obviously domestically, kind of a banking system or a government has been around for a long time in some form or fashion. And so the reason I say that is, while we may not always agree and we may not always understand, I think there has to be a certain level of trust. There's okay to have a certain amount of skepticism or concern, but I think it's one of the tenets of your podcast is energy, and so where focus goes, energy goes, right? And so where your focus goes, your energy flows. And so I think if you get so wrapped up with what's happening, it's a scary time. We had a tragedy in this country again yesterday, and then over the weekend, in our community, there was a shooting that affected my kids, and so that creates fear and uncertainty that I would say is real and tangible, outside of stuff maybe folks don't understand. But it always seems to equalize, I guess, is where I'm going with all that. It's I don't think the bank issue is completely systemic. I think with the last bank collapse, they were leveraged in areas that they probably shouldn't have been, and they were sort of a niche bank, and so stuff like that happens, right? And so the government steps in. I think that's sort of in that case, I'll call it a necessary evil, because as you and I spoke before, if that didn't happen, then it's a run on all these small banks, and it will start to crumble. So that's not good. And so I think it's interesting. I was doing some prep for this. Is you never really know when you're in a recession until you look backwards to look at indicators, right?
Right.
And so we don't know where we are in this cycle, but from what I see and what I hear and what we read and synthesize, it feels like we're more at the tail end. And so I'm an eternal optimist too. So when people talk about politics, or even growing
Me
up,
too.
it's
just
a
problem.
Yeah. So it's just like, so I personally, I don't like to really dwell on a lot of the things I can't really, really control. And so I would encourage that, I think, for people, to the energy part is spend time and energy on things that you can control, things that you can be positive about, and then just be aware. Awareness is another one of those tenets, but then be aware of what's going on and take that information in and be able to apply it to what you're trying to do.
I was listening to your first episode in prep for this one to know what we talked about. And we talked a lot about patience.
Yes.
And we talked that was a big concept for us last, almost a year and a half ago. And I wonder how it's probably way more prevalent today to have patience, and the thought that in the world we live in, we want fast returns and quick returns. And it's funny, from the point we first met to today, crypto has flown and fallen, right? NFTs have flown and fallen. That was a big talk for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting, the contrast of what's happening today too. And now it's becoming more institutional stuff that's kind of struggling.
Yeah.
But is the advice the same? Is the advice to just continue to stay patient? Do we double down now?
I would say yes. I think if people have a time, if time is a great equalizer, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have time and you're not trying to, what I'd say, get rich quick, I think that's kind of an NFT kind of crypto mentality.
Yep.
I'm not saying that maybe those products, if you want to call them, or whatever, how you ever want to refer to them, I do think maybe they will serve a place long term. But I think anytime anybody's trying to get rich on anything in life quickly, that could be a recipe for disaster, because your focus is so short term, right? And so we put something out that we don't know how to get rich quick, but we know how to get rich slow, right? And so it is patience. I think about a client we have. They're in their late 70s. I'm going to see him. I actually talked to him yesterday. We're going to see him in a month, because they both have birthdays close together. This guy, one of those stories, he came from Europe. He was trained as a vet in England, and came over here with a couple $100 in his pocket, started a vet practice here, bought a house he could barely afford in Mission Viejo. It still lives in it today, probably worth a couple $1 million. Humble folks, not lavish spenders. They enjoy areas of their life and travel, etc. And he's worth about $12 million. And he didn't buy Apple in 1978. He just saved and invested and paid attention and was patient, and it's just clipped up.
Yeah.
And so you would see this guy, and you never in a million years would think that he has any money whatsoever. He is just, and so that's my point about getting rich slow, is that you do have to be patient and you do have to have time.
Yeah.
And then if you're entrepreneurs like you and I, there's an aspect of doubling down on yourself and your abilities and where you believe, your unique industries are going, to be able to continue to funnel into those other endeavors, which you and I talk about from time to time, of just how do you take what you do on a daily basis to be able to create legacy or wealth or impact for your family or your community or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to generate cash, right?
Yeah.
So how can you generate more cash? You got to invest in yourself.
Yep.
And then if you can create cash and invest in yourself, and hopefully you have something to invest in and build wealth long term.
Yep. But really back to the banks, and one thing I was going to say is I know people get tired of hearing this, but it really is true, is somewhat of the secret sauce is time, and the other is diversification, and that's kind of what happened to some of these banks, and that's what we saw back in, 07, 08, is back to getting rich quick and greed, which I'd call that can get the best of you. And most of the time it eats your lunch. There are those stories we hear that people did get luckier. It worked out when they got a little greedy, but the banks got greedy on the mortgages back then. And, maybe, I don't know a ton about SVB, but I mean, perhaps they got greedy on, in the private equity space or tech, because they're like, we may find the next Steve Jobs and they may put all their money here, but you have a lot of those that aren't. And so you just have to be careful of that.
It's funny how they had a problem of having too much money to put, and they put it in an incredibly safe security, and then safe security.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that, because I think most people would assume that Treasury is safe, but as you know, bonds, oscillated.
Interest rate sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah, they're interest rate sensitive. If interest rates go up, bond prices go down, and that caught them with their shorts down, and they became illiquid with pretty fast. And then you have a $50 billion bank run, which is also fascinating in today's world. Tell us about that.
Yes, I mean, I don't know what went into that thought process. I mean, I think the writing was on the wall that interest rates were going to go up, and so I don't know what the thought process was to
buy 10-year bonds.
You had to go so heavy in that space when, I think they may have bought it somewhere at 1%, and it's at 3.25 or something this morning, and so it's that puts you in a really tough place. And then if you need to be liquid, and then there's a run on the bank, and then you have to sell assets to be able to cover those deposits, it turns into just a very quick.
That should have been a war game scenario. Somebody should have been sitting in a room, right? And we can talk about that too.
Yeah. So, but I think that goes for all of us, right? I think that you could take what I call a Wall Street concept and take it to Main Street, is just back to diversification. It's like we all need to put our money in other things. Or it's okay to dabble in things that you enjoy or speculative stuff like crypto, but you have to stay focused, on the goal and what you're trying to do. And we talk a lot about that. People always want to ask me, it's like, what kind of rate of returns? What does a portfolio look like? And I'm like, believe it or not, like that doesn't matter as much as you think it does. It matters to a certain degree, but it really matters about what we're trying to do, where we're trying to go, what you want and what you want your life to look like. And let's create that picture. Right. So you and I talked about it, walking in here. You said when you bought this place, it was framed. I'm sure you didn't walk up and say, before I buy this, what kind of wood? Where is that coming from? Oregon, or is that Washington, or is that East Coast wood? What kind of screws are those? Just never. I mean, as we talk about, you laugh, right?
Yeah.
But it's like people come to us and it's just like, you're going to get me to those goals, but how are you going to build it to get there? It's like, if I use Oregon wood or Washington State wood, or if I use galvanized screws or whatever.
Honestly, it doesn't matter.
It probably at the end of the day doesn't matter to some degree. Perhaps, but not to the degree that you would think it would. Just because you use one lumber over another or one type of screw over another doesn't mean that your house is going to fall to the ground. It may mean one's a little bit stronger than the other, but it's I would say minuscule. I think that gets lost on people a lot.
So we're not here to give wealth advice or investing advice, but if somebody wants to get their financial stuff in order, what is your advice for the one thing they can do that will help, besides call Erik? What is the one thing they can do that they can take ownership of that will be the first domino to create a lot of structure or a lot of...
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually did not talk or prep, but I actually woke up this morning, no lie, thinking about this answer right here. And the answer I'll give you, which is the one that kind of hit me this morning, I do talk about a lot, is they can get clear on their outcomes. They can get clear on what it is that they truly want. That is the first step. That, in my mind and in our practice, is the first domino that falls. We don't talk about how much they make or how much they want to invest or how much they have here. That is all sort of after the fact. We want to go deep and understand what is it you're trying to accomplish, and then let's build a plan, or sometimes what we call a blueprint, to do that. Back to your house here. They didn't just come and say, this is a great spot and let's just start throwing lumber together and move someone in here. They came and there was a blueprint, and then the builders come in and they say, I'm going to build what it looks like on here. And then when they start building, there's certain course corrections they have to make to actually get it off the ground, because you have two different people doing this. And that's very much how we work. Yeah. Right. And unfortunately, the world is all about how are we, the builder itself, versus what are we trying to build. And that is the great absence in most people's financial
So let's
situation.
riff about this, because I want to give people really clarity. And even for me, selfishly, I want to understand this, because it's often not about like, well, I want to make, $500,000 a year, $1 million a year. That's not what we're talking about here.
No.
We're talking about, I want to enjoy 3 to 4 weeks of vacation anywhere in the world, which costs me X.
Yep.
I want to be able to have this type of time freedom.
Yes.
I want to be able to live in this place. I want to be able to visit my mom who lives on that side of the planet a couple times a year or whatever, right? Like, we're not talking about money. We're talking about the lifestyle we're trying to design. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, because people are so fixated on them, because... Let's think about it for a second. In today's world, you don't really touch money anymore. It's on your card.
It's true.
It's, I may have a couple bucks in my wallet kind of by accident, but I never have any cash. Go to Dodger Stadium. We're talking about that. Everything's cashless, right? So today, money is in another dimension. Right? And so you see it on a statement. And so what happens is it causes you to start fixating on what's my rate of return, the number itself. But the thing is, and I tell people all the time, you aren't investing or saving or doing whatever you're doing for that number. You're doing it for what that number represents to you personally. Okay? You're not trying to accumulate $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever it is. You're trying to accumulate what that is going to give you, which ultimately my clients tell me over again is the F word: freedom. That represents freedom of some sort. Now, they think in their mind, if I have $10 million, that's freedom. But we go a step further, because it's like, what does freedom mean? What does that look like? Maybe it's this vacation you're talking about of 4 weeks. Maybe it's seeing your mom halfway across the globe. Maybe it's sending your kids to a certain education. And it isn't even for you about giving your girls that education. It's the options they have in the future because of that education, because of your sacrifice, because you saved, because you got 7%, got you that.
Yeah.
Right. And so all this other stuff gets lost and people start to fixate on the front end versus the back end. And I think that is quite honestly the greatest mistake we see people make, and we want them to get clear on whatever it is they want. I say, whatever it is you want, let's talk about what you want, and then let's just reverse engineer the math and work backwards. So, and sometimes they do have to save more. Sometimes they do need to get more return, but now we know that. Versus just throwing stuff at the wall and trying to get, alpha out of your portfolio. It's because then, think about it, for me, I'm a captain steering a ship and I have no idea where I'm going, right? And I use an airplane analogy all the time. You and I would never go to the airport right now. I mean, we're crazy guys, but we'd go to the airport, we may buy a ticket, but we'd go to a certain airline, which we know is going to take us in a certain direction. And then let's say we flew to New York. You don't ever get on a plane and say, assume you could, just take me wherever you're going and I'm happy to get there, right? Because maybe you end up in Alaska and you're like, I brought shorts, I'm screwed, right? Or whatever it is. So you have to have a general bearing, and then once you start getting there, you can course correct. And so that's, I think that's critically important for people.
Let's pivot to relationships.
Okay.
Because I think you're a relationship guy. You've spent a lot of time focusing on that in not only your business, but in your personal life.
Yep.
So tell me what does relationships mean to you today versus maybe a year and a half ago? What's going on with your thinking about relationships? And
yeah, relationships, and I would even say communication is really key. We talk a lot about that with our clients. We use the word partnership. We want our clients to know that we're partnering with them, that this is really a two-way street and we're in this thing together. Because we don't ever partner with someone that we don't think really wants the advice that we're giving or at the degree we're giving it. And if they want us to be a vendor or sort of an in provider for them, we oftentimes don't even engage in those relationships because, once again, I'm a captain steering a ship and I don't know where I'm going, and it creates a real bad situation. Really quickly back to COVID, my friends ask me all the time, "Hey, is your phone ringing off the hook?" And I'm like, my phone's never ringing, ever. And the reason being, one, we have a relationship, and two, we have a plan, right? So if the market's up or down today, or there's this kind of V dip we saw during COVID, it's irrelevant because they're not retiring tomorrow. I don't have them in a place where they've lost everything temporarily on paper. And so with that relationship, with that trust, and with the plan, we're able to get them there. And so I think during COVID, I think as I'm getting a little bit older, those relationships are important ones where you can thrive, where it's mutually beneficial. I think that's just it's super key. As you said, I'm very relational. I'm an only child, so I could be alone totally fine, but I get energy from people. I'm extroverted, and I love pouring in and giving to people. That brings me joy. And so when I have that in relationships, that brings me joy. And so I've taken that into our business because I'm fortunate in the fact that I get to be selective who we work with. Like if someone's just not our cup of tea, or we're not vibing, or maybe they're disrespectful, or they take advantage of our time, or my staff, or whatever it is, it's just that this is not going to be a good relationship, right? Just like your spouse. I always joke with people, it's like if you called your spouse and text your spouse and they never responded to you, right? Eventually you're gonna be like, what gives? Are we okay? Are we like on the rocks? Like you just wouldn't just, man, this is fun, and just let it drift on, right? You want to understand what's happening. And so it's the same thing for us. And I've just had to come to realize that relationships ebb and flow, right? Some get stronger. You see these quotes that sometimes people come into your life for a season for something. And I'd probably say that's one of the hardest things about my business today is when I have relationships that I really enjoy and I think we're doing a great job. And then it fizzles for whatever reason, or they're going through whatever. That's probably the toughest part for me at this point, right? Because honestly, this may sound a little hokey, but I 100% am sincere about this. I think about what that means for their financial future by the relationship sort of breaking down, right? And so I had a client, I was actually thinking about this yesterday, that we really, really enjoy. It seems like they're going a different direction. They've gotten to a business, not to give it away, I won't talk too much about that, but they're just in a place where the relationship's really drifted, and it seems like by what they put out that they're doing really well, and I think they need us probably more than ever, but they're sort of sucked into a certain mindset, or I'll even say corporate culture, that tells them something different. I could only fight so hard to try to save that relationship, that if I fight too much here, then I start to neglect other relationships that are key. So that's what's tough, because I know it. I've been doing this 18 years. I know what this looks like and I'm not saying I'm the only guy around that could do this, but I think we're somewhat special in how we do it and how we care for our clients. And so the relationships.
Well, one of the things I've been learning and observing in you too is the way you develop relationships.
Yeah.
It is a few words show up for me. Like you're able to be really authentic, and you curate the connection in a really beautiful way. And I haven't seen many people do that. Yeah. And you don't do it in a sort of forceful way, because you're trying to get clients and work through it, but you also show up with this like level of confidence of like, this is who we are. We stand on our pillars. We know what we're doing. Right. And you're either going to gravitate towards us or you're not. Yeah. But you also are very intentional about the connection, and I think there's something really to learn from that. Like, you're a big reader, you study a lot about all this stuff, but like you can get very personal very fast too. And I think there's something like beautiful about how you do that. Yeah,
a couple of things about that is I one time heard that 50% of people are going to like you and 50% of people aren't. So why don't you just be yourself and let the right gravitate? And that was a really, I think, pivotal moment. I don't know if we talked about this last time or I've talked offline, but early in my career, I would see these people they'd put up that are, these, superstars, we'll call it. And the way they communicate, or the way they handle themselves, or the way they explain concepts, I'm like, I want to be that guy, right? And then Tim Bass, who you had on, is a good friend and was my coach. Another pivotal moment is he says, we all have great strengths and skill sets, and we all have our weaknesses. We could either spend all of our time trying to make our weaknesses strengths, or we could just exploit the strengths we have and then hire to our weaknesses, or find ways, I'd say, to compensate. And that was, and I tell him that from time to time, is that was so pivotal. So it's like, I could just be me. I dress like this when I go to meetings. I talk this way. The way you see me in a meeting or socially, I'm really the same guy. Maybe when we travel, I cut loose and maybe a little bit more fun-loving, in those settings. But the guy you see, because one of my pet peeves is you get one person that's one way, and then the lights turn off or whatever, and then they turn into a completely different person, and it's just like, who the heck are you? So I want people to feel comfortable. Dress this way, show up to meetings a certain way, because you're right, with the connections, they know how much we care. With, I think, how we deliver concepts, they're like, this guy's not wearing a suit, and he didn't drive up in a big fancy car. He's not wearing a freaking sewer drain size watch, and just, this big flashy guy. And I was that guy for such a long time. And I think back at maybe how many people that I may have alienated, we'll call it, by just how I showed up and looked, right? And so when we went through this big metamorphosis about 4 years ago, I said, I want to truly be me. I want to show up how I want to show up, and 50% of people are going to like me, 50% of people aren't, and we want to go all in on the relationships, because we really felt that was the staying power and the longevity of our business. And furthermore, really good, just another thing I want to say is that I saw the world going to telecommuting and phone and text and email, and so like hands-off communication.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's an aspect of old schoolness that people still want. And I think in this business, you want to be face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball.
I think in any business.
Yeah. There are a subset of people that want that, and there's a subset of people that just email me, and it's like, I will have to connect you with another advisor if you want an email type relationship, because that's not how we do it.
Yeah, there's a whole nother generation of people that are very comfortable with that, so it's going to be interesting to see and watch what happens. I think, on one of these trips you mentioned this word tribe. Mm-hmm. What does tribe mean to you?
So I think the first thing, I think, is a group of people working towards a common good. I think you think of, the Native Americans, or any native people of any land. There's maybe a little bit of a hierarchy, but everybody has their job. They all have their role, but at the end of the day, they don't really have an ego. It's just you're there for the common good of the group, right? So, maybe old school, you'd have the guys out hunting and gathering, and then you'd have the women, doing whatever. But everybody was doing it for the greater good of that community.
The community.
And so I think that's what's so great about the trips we go on and some of the stuff that we talk about, and you're creating. Guys like you and I, and we did talk about at the end of our last podcast, that's why we hooked up one on that trip, is that it could be lonely. There's not a lot of place where you have a confidant that you could say, I'm scared, or things aren't going good, or I'm working too much and my personal relationship is breaking down, or I'm stressed out and I'm starting to drink too much, or whatever it is. It's just, you don't have that level of vulnerability, right? And so in a tribe, you once again, it's just all about the greater good of the community. And so I think you have some of that vulnerability. You don't have that ego, right? And I think that's really, really important. It's really, really important. And so to support one another.
Well, I feel like for me, this 50-50 rule is really big. I think I grew up in a way of like always thinking that everyone needs to like you. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs to like me. Mm-hmm. And I think it changes your behavior. It makes you do certain things, and you don't quite. I don't know if I quite realized until I got older. Mm-hmm. But it's true that you're actually much happier when you find your own space and you find your own authenticity, and then you ultimately find your own tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that foundation to live life from, I think, gives you a lot of power.
Yes. I remember. I'm not super close with my mom, but I remember. Man, it was probably 15 years ago. So 15 years ago, I was in my mid-20s, and she said something one time we were together, because she was always concerned about, her sister and not having a great relationship and judging her. And I said, why does it matter? And she's like, it seems like you don't care about anybody's opinion. And I care to a degree. And I think as I've gotten older, I probably care less and less.
Why don't you give a shit, Erik?
Yeah.
Give a shit.
So I give a shit about, I think, things that are really deep. I care deeply about our business. I care deeply about our persona and being separate from what I think the industry perceptions are. I take what I do and the seriousness of it very, probably one of the things I take the most serious, and the responsibility that I know and the trust that people instill in me that is never ever lost on me. And so, but outside of that, if people don't like me or don't like our style, that is totally okay, because that is just not a good relationship for us to be in. And so the same thing, like I said, in life, the 50-50, half of them are going to like you and half of them aren't going to. It's just, I want to be comfortable in my own skin. And I think so many people aren't comfortable in their own skin, right? And I think that's a terrible way to live. If you ask how did I develop that, I don't really know how I did. It's just maybe it's kind of part of who I am. And I grew up very insecure, and early in business I was insecure. I think we all have our insecurities, but I just want to be me. I just want to be the best version of me, and let the right people gravitate to that. And you're right, it's absolutely freeing to be that way.
We'll kind of navigate it into the third pillar of energy there.
Yeah.
Managing your energy is super important, right?
Yep.
Controlling and protecting your energy.
Yep.
What is your thoughts about that? What are you doing to keep your energy high? And then
I would say that's a weakness of mine. I'm an emotional person. I could get worked up pretty easily. I mean, I don't like fly off the handle or scream or that type of person, but I do somewhat wear my emotions on my sleeve. That's why I read Goggins, trying to, and it may not be quite that hard, right? Where he's just always cursing, but I think there's an aspect of taking those insecurities or vulnerabilities or failures, perhaps, and using them as fuel, as Goggins talks about in his book. But this week and last week, perhaps, my energy's been a little bit down. I've been a little bit more pessimistic than usual, maybe a little bit more short fuse. It's just maybe not handling or managing stress or my responsibilities as well as I should be, which I think some of that's self-inflicted. But I think being aware of that, understanding that I'm doing that, how to reset. I do have a unique knack that every time I go to sleep and I do wake up kind of renewed and refreshed every single day. I've always been that way. Here's a little bit my upbringing was a little volatile with my mom growing up, and so I've just had to figure out a way to shake it off. And so no matter if yesterday was the best day I ever had or worst day I ever had, when I close my eyes and wake up at 4, 5, 6 in the morning and those eyeballs open and feet hit the floor, it's just like it restart. Yeah. And so I think that really
a gift.
That's a gift. Yeah, that really helps. It could be a gift, and it could be it could also be a risk or threat, because if you have an issue with a significant other or whatever it may be, you see them the next day, they may think, oh, you don't care about it, you just kind of shook it off so quickly. But I do think, especially in the business I'm in and how difficult it is in the early years, and they always say it doesn't get easy, it just gets easier. And so we still have tough days, we still have defeats and failures and frustrations and things we're working through. And I have a good team that supports me. So when I'm down and I need to be picked up, they pick me up. And then when they're down, I pick them up. So I think that's really, really helpful. But just, once again, just staying focused on our goals, staying focused on our purpose, focused on what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. And my belief in it all, I think just keeps me going that direction. So
you work with a lot of coaches. You're
Yeah, I mean, I have one business coach in Denver. She's been awesome. We've been working together probably 3.5 years. About 3 years. We have a consulting firm that helps us operationalize and just how do I be a better leader and how do we delegate and all that sort of stuff. And so I'd say they're kind of a coach of ours. And then reading and then just being around great folks like you and other guys on our trips, just leaning into them to learn from them. And I think it's important to surround yourself with good people, right? So many people just get sucked into negativity, kind of where we started. I don't watch a lot of the news. I don't read a lot of that stuff. I try to focus on kind of the factual stuff that impacts our world or our clients. I just don't want to be bogged down by it. So
let's talk about routine.
Yeah.
What's working? What's not working?
My routine's been a little off. I had a great routine going up to Costa Rica, and then February was short. My son was playing a lot and doing some traveling, so I would tell you I failed on our March. It's
funny. Yeah, we should talk about March Madness because I think it's funny. people need to realize the routine needs to ebb and flow. Like
Yeah.
you just said, all the other things going on in your life.
Yeah.
And I think we're really hard on ourselves
Yeah.
about like, oh, I need to do this and do this and do this. And I'm super tough on myself. And we created a March Madness competition of like 30 days of movement and meditation and mindset. But it's not something that's always easy to just commit to all the time.
Yeah.
There's things in life.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
happens.
I would say when we talked about being comfortable in my own skin and kind of like not giving a shit, that's where it kind of bites me in the ass a little bit, because I'm like, I'm fine, or I could work out later, or I can cut the workout short. And so I think that's one area that I'm spending some time, and need to spend a little bit more time, is just focusing on my mindset. Atomic Habits is a great book. I love it. He talks about not breaking your habits twice in a row. So just getting back to that, moving, drinking water, the meditation, the reading, all of that, I think in balance helps just me be a better human.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of drifted from that. I've actually been thinking about that last couple of days. It's like, okay, how am I going to reset? I'm going to see a client, they're retiring, really proud of like what they've done and our help in getting them there. And so I'm going up to the Central Coast to hang out with them and celebrate this retirement. But then it's like I'm back, busy weekend with baseball and soccer. And then it's like on Monday we start a new month. And so it's like, okay, how do I reset the clock and go hard in the paint in April, which will be a gateway to like May and June and having a great summer. I saw a great quote yesterday that's really been on my mind, and it is, I am the person I am today because of the work I did yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
It's powerful.
I was like, I need to put in more work today so I'm a better person tomorrow, because I always wake up tomorrow and I'm like, man, like
It's a new day.
It's a new day, but I there's more I could have. The more I could have done, yesterday to be a better person today. So that's an area.
The thing I love and hate about high performers is the reason why they're high performing is they're super hard on themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I have to be careful, because I feel like I'm so tough on myself and those close to around me that, and I'm not saying in any way you shouldn't be tough on yourself, but we have to be careful, because I find when I'm too tough on myself, there's like an edge that goes off a cliff.
Right.
It's like it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
I think as long as you can keep it healthy and the motivation healthy. That's why I love doing stuff in tribes, because I'm like, oh well, there's a healthy balance of
Yes.
collaboration and support, and it's not like me just beating myself up.
Right.
It's like, hey, let's do this together. It kind of change the dynamic, and I like to do that once in a while.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't think there's a perfect formula, unless you're Goggins and you're just grinding. But
grind
there's a
every day.
reason why there's only one of him.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. What are you reading right now? You're a big reader. What's
I'm kind
profound
of,
right now?
I'm kind of in a holding pattern. That Get Different book that I gave you. I want to kind of go through some of that again. There's a book about, there was these monks in New York that have raised dogs for over 100 years. They talk about like the psychology and the relationship with your dog and how you develop that and trust and training techniques and so forth. But it's narrated by these guys. They have like a little bit of accent, so kind of like almost lulls me to sleep. But that book's important. It's in my queue. I listen to it from time to time. But I'm best when I find a book that I'm like, I'm into this. I love it. So when I'm on a drive or doing something, I can just put it in and just kind of listen and zone out. Makes my drives go faster. So I don't have anything that I'm like, this is my jam right this second. So I need to go through my book list and get that going. I've finished maybe 3 books so far this year, but any book recs, you guys can send them my direction.
You can Instagram Erik.
Yeah. So
Let's talk about the trip.
yeah,
Let's talk about Epic Trips. I don't advertise or talk about it too much, but it's been on my heart to create a community and travel with people that I really wanted to travel with. So selfishly, I created this for myself. But tell me what it's done for you. Tell me what it's meant to you. Tell me what you've got out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely nothing short of epic. So that's a great name for it. I think the unknown of it all is really awesome, because when you're a father, you have family. Or
Tell people what it is.
Yeah. Okay. So it is. It's a curated experience where nothing of what's going to happen outside of the flight you have to get on and probably the city you're going to, and then you get there and you just really kind of surrender to what the experience is going to be, and there's an itinerary, and parts of it you do go over, and some of it you don't. And so I think that's a great balance of knowing what's coming next. I mean, there's nothing crazy we're going to do, like jump out of an airplane when people are just afraid of heights or something like that. But pushing the limits, and I think it's a great balance between self-development, I'll call it, maybe some self-reflection, bonding, as well as adventure. And I think that mix is really awesome. We've talked about other ways to kind of expand that, where maybe the guys are doing more of it, or would do some of the cooking, and where there's an opportunity for us to bond, but also kind of work together. Once again, for the tribe, kind of for the common group. If one group is in the kitchen and one group's grilling or whatever it is. So I think there's other iterations of this, but it's just a place to completely unplug, to completely lean into the tribe and meet these guys. Most of them you do not know, but they're high performers like you in different industries. But what's awesome, and the thing that really jumped out at me at our first trip, was there were a lot of, I would say, really successful guys, but once you go away from your world into a different world, you're just a guy. And I noticed that everybody had the same concerns and issues. How do I do better for myself? How do I do better for my family? How do I create something for my family that I didn't have? How do I create a great environment for my employees and create a great product? And so that was really cool early on to see, hey, we, at the core of us all, we're all the same.
We're all the same.
So that's really awesome. And Costa Rica was great because you have a little bit of the jungle vibe that we didn't have in San Carlos, with more of a arid desert kind of feel, but a lot of the same stuff. Backcountry, the ATVs, the zip lining was really awesome. All the surprises, like the dinner on the beach, and then being able to reflect on the day. Doing some work on how we are business owners, how we delegate, how we show up, what our own purpose is. So it's just really interwoven in there, in such a nice way. So it's awesome.
Yeah, for me, I think the most powerful thing that I observe is how quickly, because I know most of them, but you guys don't know, but like how quickly people get vulnerable and connect.
Yeah.
With complete strangers.
Yeah.
If you put the right chemistry together and the right safe space together.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a lot of, like, when you unplug, like you said, you get a lot more ideas. You change the way you think about your life and what's possible and what other people are doing. And, they say that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And like, who are we spending our time with?
Right.
And so these trips have meant a lot to me, to be able to curate this space where guys could just be themselves and expand.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of things that we talk about that we can't talk about with many people.
Right.
And I think there's, how can we foster those spaces in our life more often?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of an epiphany I had as you were just talking is that when you don't have to, once you get to your destination, when you don't have to think about where the next meal is coming from, what the next adventure is, and you're really, I'd say, insulated, I'll call it, from all of that decision making, then you have the ability to just be, right?
Yes.
And so I'd get up in the morning and guys would be having coffee, a couple guys would be at the table chatting or having a pastry, some people would be sitting over here reading a book, some people would be in the pool, and they're just being, right? And just, if you think about it, how often does anybody have that ability, much less someone that runs a business, has employees, has a family, has their own mental health to take care of, right? And just so much stuff going on and so much pressure, and a lot of times the time isn't yours. When you just have that time, you and I have talked about that, and kind of some of the time I take, what your mind starts to do and starts to sort of unwind things that you've been either thinking about or want to think about, just sort of comes to you, and it's really awesome in connection with having guys that are like you that you can lean on to ask questions and can support you in that. So it's really special.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say as we wrap up here?
No, I mean, I think the epic trips are great, as we talked about. How do we continue to, add people to that, kind of diversify the folks that show up and getting the word out. So I think if there are people that are interested in that, reaching out to you, or even if they want to reach out to me, it's I think it's only going to get better as the tribe grows stronger and has different folks in it.
I should go back and find out how you answered this question, but I'm going to answer you again today. What does it mean to live a rich life? To live a rich life, I would say
one thing that comes to mind for me, maybe I answered this way, is that I was asked, how do you live a 10 out of 10? Right. And so when you hear like, how do you live a rich life? I think, how are you getting the most out of life? How are you optimizing? And how I define living out a 10 out of 10 or even a rich life. For me, it's doing what I want, when I want, with who I want. I think I probably answered it that way back then. It's kind of coming.
We'll have to see.
We'll have to check the tape. But I think that's important. I think if people stop focusing on the world around them and how they compare, how are they keeping score in reference to that stuff, and they think about, once again, not to beat a dead horse, but how do they think about what it is they want, what are they trying to create, and why are they trying to create that, and how they get clear on that. Because one thing we talk about a lot is sacrifice. And I always say the pain of sacrifice is optional. Pain is optional. You get to kind of pick the pain, but the sacrifice is inevitable, right? And so as you and I work, and if we're trying to create more, that means that we have less time with our friends or less time with our family. But sometimes you sacrifice that time with your family to give them something more. But it's like, what is that more and how much is enough, right? And so I would say in my industry, maybe in our firm, I've been maybe somewhat, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying ostracized, but sort of on the outside of it all, because I don't want to compete for competing's sake. I don't want to make more money for making more money's sake, or doing X amount of transactions or accumulating X amount of clients just because someone else is telling me I should do that. I've really got focused on... And
you actually did do that as contrast.
I used to be that guy.
Right,
I used to be like, what are the numbers and where am I and how am I number one? And, with our firm, we have these ribbons, and it's really a visual representation of everything that you did. But it's really interesting as you start to evolve, as I think we all do, is, I look at these people now and I'm thinking, what are the unintended consequences of all of those ribbons? What did you give up? What did you sacrifice? What did you miss to do that? And was it what you wanted, right? Was that the purpose? And I tell people, it's not like I'm independently wealthy and I don't need to work and I have more money than I know what to do with. I absolutely do not. But I truly, truly believe in what we do and how we do it. And I want to do it in the right way and have the right relationships come to us. And I'm willing to be patient as I can be, because I'm not a very patient individual. And so when you have that freedom and you have that clarity, I think that is a rich way to live. Because I just talked to so many people that are, what I'll say, listless and maybe even somewhat unhappy. And there's, I think, an inverse relationship between how much money sometimes people have and how unhappy, how happy they are, right? The inverse relationship. So that therefore they're unhappy. And you're like, you have all this money, you have no worries. But it's like, yeah, you have all the money, you don't have financial worries, but you probably have other worries that were created as an unintended consequence of that money. And so, I don't know really where that came from, but I just have not wanted to be that person.
We talked a lot about money mindset in the last episode too. It's why there's 5 pillars in my rich equation also, that there's so much emphasis on income and money only, and the sacrifices that we must have in order to get that.
One of your pillars that we didn't talk about it is awareness, and I think that's what I'm talking about, is that when you're aware of these things, and I'm not saying money is bad, I'm not saying having these things, but I always talk
how can we learn how to be more aware?
I think you have to pause. I think I've been fortunate, a few years ago I was at a corporate meeting and this lady spoke and she said that she started taking the summers off. And I don't know if I talked about this last time.
Did
I talk about this?
No, I don't remember, but I know you've told me.
Yeah. So from that meeting, that was my only takeaway. So I was like, how am I going to create an environment where I take the summer off? How am I going to create a narrative so that it is received the best it can be received? Because obviously I can't control it. I can only control the message. I can't control how it lands with my clients and people we're working with. And so it was off-putting to a small group of folks, but most of my clients started to then be conditioned about, hey, you're going to take the summer off, like, let's get this meeting here, or what are you doing this? And then it started to create some dialogue. And at 35 years old, I was taking 3 months off, and so I think people in their own insecurities was like, oh, that's arrogant of you, and hey, how can you do that, and why can't I do that, right? So you have, I think there was a little bit of, maybe I'd call it jealousy, but most people, I did it really because I wanted to inspire people. I wanted people to know that you can create whatever environment you want. You just, you have to do more in the other 9 months. You have to you have to set your world up in a way that is possible, right? And I'm truly a believer that really just about anything is possible. And so so the following year I took the summer off, and I think I took off from Memorial Day to like the second week in August. So kind of fast forward, I did that for 2 or 3 years, and then COVID hit, and I didn't want to be, I'd say, an ambulance chaser, for lack of a better word, calling people like, hey, you're scared, like how can I, what can we do with your money, or you need insurance or whatever. And so I really kind of just kept a low profile and supported the clients we had and any concerns they had. And I didn't really work a lot, for 2 or 3 months. And so I was like, when things started kind of opening in summer, I'm like, I'm not going to take summer off now because I just didn't really work a lot in the last 2 or 3 months. And that started to really change or shift, that I started taking intermittent weeks off. And then, I think my team is so good now. This year, I don't have the summer planned off. I don't have weeks planned off, but I have a lot of flexibility and travel. And like I said, my son playing baseball. And so I just set up my schedule based on what my life looks like.
I think it's interesting as I'm listening to, like, in the mind of the listener, there are times where you should be full throttle.
Yes.
All in, almost blindly putting effort on the table,
yes.
Leaving nothing on the table.
Yes.
But there's also seasons of reflection and awareness of, I'm going to try to push the limits here in my ecosystem and everyone around me, of like taking a few months off. And I know you spend a lot of time in nature. You really have built a really great life of freedom. I've knowing you closely, I've seen you do that, but I don't know if that's necessarily advice for everybody all the time. Erik earned the ability to do that.
Yes.
I think that's an important thing. Like if you're not there, that's in some ways perhaps you haven't put in the effort to allow you to design that life.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's important. Like if you're not getting the results you want, don't go take another 4-week vacation.
Right.
Sometimes you got to put your head down, and maybe you need to go away for a couple days and decompress and reflect and think.
Yeah.
But
with
it's interesting, like, because people can hear that and say, well, I'm just going to take now 3 months off. It's like, well, wait, no, you're not in a place where you should.
Right. Yeah.
You should grind and get that promotion, or go get those extra 5 clients and build that freedom for yourself. Anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about that, and in my 20s, I started doing this in 2005. I was 23 when I started, and then quickly turned 24. And my 20s were virtually non-existent. Right. So when all of my friends and all these people, and I was dating someone at the time, and the relationship broke down because, I was up early and didn't have money, and I was focused on my business. I had to get up early and do it again. And she wanted to go out and she wanted to do this stuff. And I did the best to try to balance that, but I couldn't keep up with it. And that relationship broke down, which is fine. And then in my 30s, like all of that work kind of cascaded, and my 30s were really good. And then I started doing this, I think I said at 35 years old, but nobody saw, the 12 years before that. Right. They just said, oh, there's a 35-year-old guy, and he's young, and he's got a young family. And so, but the thing I always did tell my clients is, like, I want you to know, like, I'm not hopping on my jet and jet setting, and I'm not going to be at Lake Como tomorrow. Right. It's like, it's not like I'm doing anything super luxurious on my time off. Right. I tell people that I try to just be a normal dude, take my kids to school, pick them up, maybe take them to practice a little bit more, do stuff around the house that I haven't had a chance to do, little projects around there, little trips to get away. I take trips with each of my kids separately to do or go wherever they want to go. We generally do a family trip. I have a business trip in July. So there is a lot already kind of going on. And so June, generally, back then at least, was kind of my time because my kids are in school till the end of June.
It's kind of funny. Like, I'm sure that period of time actually gives you rocket fuel, too.
Yeah.
Because you remind yourself why you're doing all the things, right? And then you go spend 9 months doing it, getting it done, so that you can go and create the value that you want to create in your life. I mean, there's something everyone should learn in this.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, just creating your environment, creating the expectations from the clients to understand who they're going to talk to, and knowing that the sun doesn't rise or set on me alone, right? I have great, capable folks. They could ask questions. And I always would joke with our clients. We'd send correspondence out like, I'm not on the moon. So if you absolutely need me, or there's a crisis or a problem or something, we're already within reason. I can be reached. I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. Like my team will still vet it and so forth. But if you absolutely need me, I'll be there. I also, because I have clients all over the country, I take the opportunity to, visit some of them. I have many clients I've never even met face to face. So that's
Good opportunity.
Cool, good opportunity to do that. And talked about the relationship earlier, and so
Good.
it's cool. This July, I'm out most of the month just for a number of travel, but I don't think it's going to be disruptive to our business, and so I look forward to that time. I think my staff didn't ever look forward to seeing me back in August or September because I was like so amped up, and I had all this stuff for the 9 months I was able to put on the back burner. I'm like, hey, I want to create this or work on this or take this through a new iteration. And so I come back just so jazzed, and I'm like, here's all the new stuff we're doing, and they're like, we can't all do this at one time. So once again, talking about unintended consequences, figuring out better ways to get that to them over the summer. It also gives them the time to decompress. It gives them also, they travel and they take vacations and they do certain things. Allows them to do some housekeeping internally and audit our systems that we use and do a bunch of other things. So there's just a lot of good things that come out of it, I think, when I do that. So that's really cool. So
well, I'm really glad we did this. I think that Erik lives a really fascinating life, and you're doing some amazing things, and you really are contradictory to a lot of the thought in your world, in the financial services world. And so it's fun to just talk to you about how you think about problems and issues in life, and you really are walking the walk, talking the talk, walking the walk, and just honored to call you a friend now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a brother and part of the tribe, and I'm glad to riff with you, bro.
Yeah. It's always awesome to be together. I love your energy. We talked about that. Hopefully people get that from our time together. Is energy is important. One of your other pillars is people, making sure they surround themselves with really good people, and being the sum of the 5 people you hang out with. I think people don't think about that a lot. Misery loves company, so they sometimes will say, I want someone that's gonna commiserate with me in that, and that's not healthy for them. David Goggins talks about, he had a friend, I don't know if you read his second book, but he had a buddy that came over and he put his phone down because his friend would always come over and bitch about something, and he put the phone down recording it, and right when his friend was done, because he knows he always come over to complain, he plays it, and he's like, what do you think about when you hear this? He's like, that's what I sound like? He's like, I wouldn't want to be around that. And David's like, yeah, how do you think I feel when you come over here, And so it's like it's I always tell you that I love being around you and spending time with you. And it's what's great about being selective with our clients is I tell folks, we are working with people that we truly like as humans, and we also know and believe that we can create an impact, right? Mm-hmm. And we're probably almost there, I guess. If I had to guess, I'd probably say we're 90+% there. That anytime I see someone on my calendar, I'm like, dude, I'm so stoked that I get to hang out with them or talk to them today. Anytime someone's like, damn, I'm talking to that person, I'm like, I know that's a place where we either need to course correct the relationship or we need to exit the relationship in a really good way for everybody's, betterment. So, surround yourself with good people, awareness, like we talked about, and just focusing on your energy and what you can control, hopefully some things people take away from today.
If people want to connect with you, how do they reach out?
Best way to do it is to email us, which is my name, erik.gomez @n@Nancy.com. You could DM us, follow us on Instagram. It's EG_wealth management. Please do not DM any financial questions. You could, hey, Erik, you're cool, or hey, can we connect? And then we'll put it on a channel where compliance can track that a little bit better. But follow us. We don't talk about a lot of financial stuff. I talk a lot about the stuff that we talked about today, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Like I like being a little bit of a contrarian. I tell people, I want to be the anti-advisor, right? Like I want people, when they see me, they think about me, they're like, this guy is like a confidant. He's a strategist. He's advising in certain areas, but I almost don't want him to put us in the financial advising bucket, because it's really more of like strategic thinking and problem solving to get them to where they want to be. And oh, by the way, yes, there's money involved in doing that. And so I just feel that's a good way to serve people and give them a paradigm shift. So
awesome.
Thanks for the time, and
hopefully
we get some other.
We'll have to do this another year and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
See where you're at.
Come up with something new. I'll read some better books. I'll have some other stuff. But just generally developing these ideas and the stuff that we're talking about.
Well, thanks, bro. I honor you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.